Welcome to Mission Evolution Radio Show with Gwilda Wiyaka, bringing together today's leading experts to uncover ever-deepening spiritual truths and the latest scientific developments in support of the evolution of humankind. For more information on Mission Evolution Radio with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit www.missionevolution.org. And now, here's the host of Mission Evolution, Miss Gwilda Wiyaka.
Each of us has probably dreamed of a utopia where every living person has all they need. Yet, often as not, we tend to brush it off as a pipe dream, well beyond the realms of possibility. But what if? Mission Evolution Radio TV show is coming to you around the world on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net. With us this hour to explore the options for abundance for all is Michael Wayne. Michael is the author of 5 books and a filmmaker. He's currently in post-production for a documentary feature film, How to Save Democracy. His most recent book, Toward a More Perfect Union, From Scarcity to Abundance for All, integrates politics, economics, psychology, and spirituality to show how to create a society that works for all. His website, drmichaelwayne.com. Michael, thank you so much for joining us on Mission Evolution.
Thank you, Gwilda. I'm honored to be here.
It's a good time of year to talk about this. You have a Ph.D. What was your field of study, sir?
It was a field called quantum integral medicine.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, it was an integration of medicine, the science, Western medicine, along with human potential, spirituality, using ideas from quantum physics and the new sciences, and put it all together to try to understand the healing and human potential that we all have.
That's a topic not the one we're going to address today, but one that I'd love to get into. You're also a practitioner of acupuncture, Chinese medicine, and integrative medicine. Where'd you study those forms?
That was at a school called Pacific College of Oriental Medicine. I think they're now called Pacific College of Health Sciences in San Diego.
Okay. So how do you move from politics? How do you move from there to politics and economics?
Well, it's an interesting evolution, but a logical progression in that working with patients, so we'd always be working one-on-one with people, be talking about the healthcare system, talking about their personal health and how they can become healthier, and also talking about the system, the healthcare system, and just how broken it is. And I would hear from people also their stories. And I'm not someone to knock Western medicine whatsoever. It's just that there were shortcomings. And those are the things I wrote about in that book you cited, Quantum Integral Medicine. And also some of the books I've written are about personal evolution. I'm subscribed largely to that. I'm a member of an organization called Evolutionary Leaders. And so I started trying to think as broad as possible and realizing not only is it about us changing ourselves, evolving ourselves, but it's society. If we do want to create this, you use the word utopia, a society that works for all, it's also about how does society transform? How does society evolve also? So they all, in the progression of books I've written and films I've made, there's a progression there from the evolution of the human to the evolution of society.
And doesn't it kind of go in that order? Doesn't the human have to evolve before society as a whole can?
Yeah, or the yin and yang of it. One can change the other, but yeah, there's definitely an interplay of the two forces.
So, do you consider yourself a quantum revolutionary? And if so, why?
Well, I like that question. Yeah, I haven't used that term in a while, but yeah, I wrote a book called The Quantum Revolution, and I do, along the lines of the lineage of other people, such as Amit Goswami, the well-known quantum physicist. And it is about how do we change the way we think, the way we act, the way we behave, and who we are as human beings. And there's so many lessons from quantum physics that teach us about consciousness, about life in this world, and how we can transform as people.
So, what does the viewpoint from the quantum physicist? How does that differ from our normal viewpoint of evolution and personal empowerment and all that stuff?
Well, in quantum physics, it talks about probabilities that from the from what has been called the quantum soup, the quantum primordial field, that's where life begins. And our matter and energy, that matter is both energy and waveform, and has the ability to be in all places at once. And even though reality, we have to be in only one place, but we have the possibility to be um, at the at the highest and greatest level of our capability, if we allow. And this is where, like, the work with acupuncture too comes in. If we open up to the things that hold us back, our impediments, our blocks, and from that we can evolve to the greatest capability. um, yeah.
So, how does acupuncture play in there?
Well, as I mentioned with acupuncture, really the science and art of acupuncture, and all medicine is really a science and art, is about helping the chi flow. And then when there's more of a flow, we're more in alignment with our own life, the microcosm, the macrocosm, and we have the capability to achieve or be the best representation of ourselves. I mean, it takes work. It's not just, I can't just wave a magic wand, do acupuncture, a person's going to be all great. It's a process, and I always talk to a person about their own lifestyle, diet, stresses, what they can do for themselves, because there's so many factors that play a role in those impediments that block the flow of chi.
Do belief systems block it?
Oh yeah, that's, our mind is there's a saying in Chinese medicine, the mind moves chi. So you could say the opposite, the mind also blocks chi. And it's really that attitude, the emotional, the attitude, and the belief systems. How rigid do we stay in our belief system? How open are we to new ideas? And yeah, so the long and short of it is, yes, belief systems play definitely a role in moving chi.
If we are able to better move chi, what results does it have? Do we get more intelligent? Do we have more options? What's going on there?
Well, a lot of things can happen. And so one of the things working one-on-one with people on a clinical basis is, and any practitioner helping people become well will tell you the same, is you have to meet people where they are. So some people may come with just a physical pain, and my hope is that their pain will improve, go away. But yeah, the more, and the people who are more tuned into the potential for acupuncture, the potential for the flow, the potential for the quantum lining with the quantum field, however you want to use the terms, the more they realize that it can lead them to greater and greater potential, greater evolution. And it's really how far their own trajectory is willing to take them. For me, I'm just a facilitator trying to help them along the way, open the door for them.
So, we have a kind of an agreed upon reality. It varies from person to person, from culture to culture, but we have an agreed upon reality. And apparently, we create our own reality. Within that, how do we move from the very limited reality, I would say, that we're in to a more expansive one?
Yeah. Well, I would say with reality, because that's a great question, and something a lot of people have contemplated. To what level do we recreate our reality? And is it just, if I want to think that I have $1 million, say, will I have $1 million? Of course, that just doesn't happen. It takes a little more than that. But there's an objective reality and a subjective reality, and these two interplay. And so, one, with creating our own reality, is how do we see the world? What is our perspective? What is our attitude? What is the energy we put forth? Do we see the world from a very limited, negative, kind of dogmatic perspective, or are we open to greater possibilities? And of course, to go from A to Z, there's many steps along the way. I can't just say, oh, I want to make my life better. I'm going to move to California or Finland or somewhere, and it's all going to be great. One has to have a logical plan. But again, some people just open up, trust the universe, and see how things work out. But yeah, so we definitely create our own reality within the schema of the objective reality and the interplay of the two.
Is our reality created for us somewhat by what we're pumped on media and this and that and buy into?
Oh yeah, so that's a good question. It's we're definitely conditioned by so many factors, and media these days. Media plays a role in what we hear, what we see, who we talk to, and so it takes a certain level of vigilance to not just go along with what you hear and accept it at face value. You do have to, kind of, I don't know, think for yourself, or just really, just not accept things from hearing it from someone.
Well, it's that magic moment. We're going to have a station break. Michael and I will return very shortly, so don't go away. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. Is a revolution needed? With us this hour discussing quantum revolution and the current state of affairs is Michael Wayne, the author of Toward a More Perfect Union, From Scarcity to Abundance for All. So, Michael, l- how does democracy in the USA differ from democracies around the world?
Well, other democracies in the world, I would say all of the democracies, well, differ in a few ways, many ways, but the big way is that other democracies in the world are social democracies, in that there's a much more um, synergistic relationship between government and the people. Where in the United States, for a number of reasons, it's it's actually more of a liberal democracy, that freedoms are most cherished here. And that's not to say freedom isn't important, but that it's not seen as an imperative that government should be as synergistic as it is in the social democracies. So it's actually a very big difference. And the United States actually was the world's first social democracy, and that occurred in the 1930s, after the Great Depression, during the Great Depression, when the government really needed to change its philosophy and help people because of so many people struggling. And so things like Social Security were created, unemployment insurance, the government created jobs for millions of people. And after World War II, when Europe was devastated, the United States actually help rebuild Europe and bring the ideas of social democracy to other countries, because that's what was occurring in the United States. So that ideas that then got exported to other countries.
So, looking around, we have plenty of we have homeless and human suffering. If human flourishing plays an important role in the formation of democracy, why are we seeing the gross lack of the above?
Of human flourishing, or sorry.
hmm Yeah, well, we're there's a lot of human suffering going on out there. There's homeless. There's all sorts of things, and yet we're supposed to be in a social democracy. What's going wrong here?
Yeah, so the United States is no longer a social democracy. Just clarify that, where other countries are. For instance, Finland has, and other of the social democracies, but especially Finland, the Nordic countries, have no homeless people whatsoever, and poverty is at a very low level. More so in the United States, for a variety of reasons, and again, because we place more emphasis on the liberal democracy and freedom. We just feel everyone should make it on their own. So government can assist, but not at the level of these other countries. And so we get this in this country a much more wide disparity of wealth and lots of people suffering because of that. And you brought up the term human flourishing, Gwilda, and human flourishing really is the basis of democracy whatsoever, that all people can flourish.
But we aren't.
We are and we aren't. It's well, here's the interesting thing, um, that it's people like there's two schools of thought on human flourishing in the United States. One is if we have less and less government, then people can attain the greatest capability of who they are as humans. They can flourish to the greatest ability, where others say, and this goes back to like Abraham Maslow's ideas of self-actualization and hierarchy of needs. So people in the other side will say that, and this is not other side, one party, another party, just people who feel that when government plays a role in helping people have more of their basic needs met, then human flourishing can be attained because people aren't having to strive so much just to have their basic needs met. And this is what we find in the social democracies of the world, that government helps people at least have a floor, a safety net, so they have a better chance of flourishing.
Would you mind leading us into this a little bit more? What exactly is a social democracy?
Well, social democracy is it's not socialism. It's capitalism with a hybrid of socialism, but not even really. But it's like the social democracies have a capitalist free market system, but they have they have an emphasis on the public good, the social contract, the safety net. So people pay a higher range of taxes, but they get more for what they pay. For instance, in this country, there is no universal health care. In the social democracies, there is. When a student goes to college, most students are ending up in debt these days, deep in debt. That does not happen in social democracies. Colleges are free or very, very limited tuition. Um, and leave, like sick leave in a lot of social democracies, vacation, sick leave, very generous leave time, maternity, paternity leave, very generous. A year and a half is a typical amount. So there's much greater emphasis again on the public good, the social contract, and people have greater trust in the government to do the right thing and feel, oh, I'm willing to pay higher taxes, which isn't even that greater than what the tax rate is in the United States. And when you incorporate what people get for their money, whereas in America we got to pay a la carte for things, Americans pay more. So anyway, that in a nutshell is what a social democracy is.
So, is there a conflict going on here with the social democracy as it presents itself in our country between the welfare of the individual and freedom of the individual and the welfare of society and the freedom of society? Sometimes those two don't mesh. What's the conflict there?
Well, again, how do we have a country or a society where we have the freedom to do what we want, to be what we want, to not have authorities tell us what is right, what is wrong? Somewhat of a libertarian philosophy with also helping people. So in our society in the United States, it is a conflict because, there are people on different sides saying, oh, we don't want more taxes, or that's socialism. And where other people saying, oh, but we want to have more things for the public good. We don't want everything in being part of the profit motive. Um, so it's a dynamic that hopefully, just like yin and yang, can find a way to complement each other. Freedom is important, and that's part of human flourishing is freedom. The opposite of that is tyranny. And the United States was founded on, give me liberty or give me death. People fought hard for that desire to have freedom.
I think it was really well demonstrated on how Americans are kind of crotchety about their perceived freedoms when COVID hit and everybody was asked to wear a mask. Whoa, what an uproar. Okay.
Mhm.
Do we see more examples like that of people flat not getting on on the train with this?
Yeah, there's so that I brought up like trust in government. So that's an interesting thing because, as I said, like in the Nordic countries and social democracies, people have greater trust in government. And where the statistics now, like in the United States in 1970, I think 75% of people trusted government. Now it's about 16%. Now there's reason to not trust government. You brought up COVID. Government made number of mistakes, and I could go into a whole spiel about that. But then there's but it's more about trusting government to do the right thing for taking care of its people. But then again, we have a debate: what is the right thing for people? And that's where like social democracy can be partly legislated, like we could legislate universal health care, say, just hypothetically. But then there's the philosophical aspect of it is about healthcare, is helping direct people towards things that actually are help them become healthier and emphasize wellness versus, oh, just take the drug and that's the answer to all your problems.
Do you see the healthcare situation, the negative portions of it in this country, a result of the capitalism, the money before all kind of mindset?
Yeah, so that goes back to your earlier question: how did I go from healthcare practitioner to writing book on politics and economics? It's Yeah, our healthcare system's broken. I'm not the first person to say that. Most people will say that. Healthcare, but it's a money. It's like a gold rush mentality. I remember someone from Canada saying, "Oh, in America, who's living in America, living in my area, said, oh, in America, all you see are healthcare facilities and fast food joints." And there might be a relationship between the two, but healthcare in this country is 20% of GDP. It's $4 or $5 trillion a year spent on healthcare expenditures. We have the most expensive healthcare system in the world in terms of healthcare expenditures, and the worst healthcare outcomes of all developed nations in the world. We have a very sick population, and but the money's in people being sick. So it's not a conspiracy. Oh, let's get people sicker so we can make more money. It just has a life of itself. It's the momentum is towards, since it is about free market system making money, and what
The
better way
natural
than
the natural result is
yeah,
that
yeah,
that's playing into
it's really
places
unfortunate.
where it probably
Yeah.
shouldn't. Well, it's about time for us to take another station break. On the other side, let's look at some solutions here. It's pretty
Yeah, for
confusing.
sure. Mhm.
Everything is everybody has a different opinion on what's going to help the situation. So Michael and I will be right back to continue our discussion. So stay right there. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. Why do great ideas lose something in the application? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. With us taking a closer look at the evolution of socialism and democracy is Michael Wayne. His website, drmichaelwayne.com. Michael, let's face it, both socialism and democracy sound great on paper, but apparently lose something in the application. How is social democracy different?
Well, again, I brought up the idea from Abraham Maslow about self-actualization, hierarchy of needs. And so, as I said, when people's basic needs are met, they have a greater capacity for human flourishing. So that's what social democracies offer people, is that having your basic needs met. Not, if you go to college, you don't end up so deep in debt. You have to figure out what am I going to do to pay off my debt? If you go have a medical issue that seeks care, you're not going to have the potential to end up deep in debt. I mean, medical debt is the number one cause for bankruptcy in the United States. So just things that allow us not to have to get down in the trenches with debt, but instead open up to what is our capability, again, human flourishing. So that's what social democracy offers.
So, how would you let's use an example of the homeless? How would you see social democracy starting to help with this problem?
Well, I'll take Finland, for example, mainly because for the film, you mentioned the film I'm making, How to Save Democracy. I interviewed someone, a Finnish person who's an authority on what's going on in Finland. And she talked about that there is no homeless and that what the policy is, get, I mean, some of the people who are homeless have substance abuse issues, have mental illness issues. That's without a doubt. Others are homeless because they just have trouble economics. But the attitude, the philosophy in Finland is get people into homes first, and then we can help work out their problems. And because there's a strong social insurance from the government that is made sure. And again, also that there's a much stronger feeling of, the social good, the public good, that we have an obligation for everyone. And it's not just, oh, they're down on their luck. Good luck, fella.
Yeah. What do they call that? The yo-yo. You're on your own, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, can the concept of social democracy be successful in the current atmosphere of, quite frankly, greed and narcissism?
Well, that's a good question, Gwilda. It's perhaps the $64,000 question because the two um, have trouble coexisting. But I brought up a history, and very quickly brought up the 1930s, and it's an interesting time in the United States in that it went from the 20s, the so-called Roaring 20s, where greed and narcissism ran amok, and then all of a sudden the stock market crashed because of the greed. And then there was an interesting evolution from 1929 to 1932, in that the President Herbert Hoover had the belief that if we help people, they'll become too dependent. They got to pull up themselves up by the bootstraps. And then with the presidency of Franklin Roosevelt, that attitude changed. And all of a sudden, there was a sea change of all of a sudden, instead of thinking about greed, it was all, we're all in this together. Carl Sandburg, the Pulitzer Prize winning poet, wrote a famous book in, I think, 1936 called The People Yes, because it was a period when people banded together and everyone really realized we're all in this together. And that also like ties in with John F. Kennedy when he was president, had that saying, a rising tide lifts all boats.
Hmm.
So
We Yet here we are, okay, kind of wallowing around in greed and narcissism. What changes do we need to see in our personal and national value systems for social democracy to have even a chance of being successful here?
well, a couple of things. Um, one is looking at the taxation rates that were during that period from the 1930s through the 1970s, a period of time that was known as the Great Compression, because the level of prosperity was equal among classes, from the working class, middle class, and wealthy. All their incomes, their wealth kind of paralleled each other. And that was because of the taxation rates, the marginal tax rates. Through that period, averaged, I think it was 70%, at times during the 1950s, as high as 90%. And there were like a handful of billionaires that time. So there weren't people who could make public policy by giving money to politicians. So there was an attitude about doing doing what's right for the public. And that was, again, I said 1930s to 1970s, through presidents, Democrat and Republican. I mean, Eisenhower, well known, built the highway system, the interstate highway system. So again, that was the attitude. So one thing is about taxation system. Another is kind of, once again, rekindling that spirit of the people. Yes, people coming together, working together. You mentioned my book, Toward a More Perfect Union, from Scarcity to Abundance for All. That title is from, especially the subtitle, From Scarcity to Abundance for All, means that instead of austerity, which is where we're fighting over the crumbs, abundance for all. There's abundance for the wealth class. They have no shortage of money that comes to them. And that's a whole conversation of how that happens. Um, and so they can do whatever they want, buy yachts and jack up the prices of houses, pay little taxes. And then the rest of us, are fighting over the crumbs. Oh, and that's part of the problem in the United States, because it said there's not enough money to pay for, have paid sick leave, or have more money into public universities, so tuition could be less, or everything, universal health care.
So right now we're the system that's established itself is we're protecting the pocketbooks of the rich on the backs of the mid class and poor.
And working class. Yeah, yeah. I mean, the poor have some safety net, but it's the working class, middle class that are, paying the brunt of it. There's just not enough things for them. They're fighting over the spoils and or the crumbs, while certain class of people are able to walk away, do whatever they want.
So we have a lot of huge social problems. I mentioned the homeless because that's pretty blatant,
Hmm.
and yet when we approach them, at least the way we're doing it today, it's almost like enabling an alcoholic in the sense that they don't have to change. They can stay in the park that everybody else is paying for, and the meal trucks and the showers and the health care will come to them. That isn't working. What's an alternative?
Well, yeah, you're right, Gwilda. This is, it's an abomination that we're seeing so many people, with problems. And again, as I said earlier, a fair amount is this substance abuse, mental illness. There are some people who are just down and out from not always reasons of their own. Um, but yeah, so I mentioned Finland. First fields house people, then help work on their problems. So again, with a generous social welfare, social insurance system, you can help people. And the drug problem, the recreational drug abuse problem in this country, stems from the opioid crisis. Now it's the fentanyl crisis, and that stems again from the free market system. So that goes to another thing about, the abuse of it by the abuse of the system by the wealth class. The opioid crisis was single-handedly created by the Sackler family. And what happens is, um, these days, since 20, 30 years, that when corporations or executives abuse the system and make lots of money doing things that are corporate malfeasance, they pay a fine. They don't go to jail. Um, and, the 2008 financial crash, no bankers went to jail. Millions of people lost their homes, and people are angry, understandably, to this day, but nobody went to jail who caused it, and so they got bailouts. So there's a lot of systemic issues in that regard.
So, back up a little bit on the opioid crisis. How was that created?
Well, as is well known and well documented, and the government's still trying to finalize the settlement, Purdue Pharma created the OxyContin, the time release opioid for pain, and they started marketing it and selling it and getting people addicted to it, even though because they claimed, even though the evidence started coming in that there was an addiction to it, people would become addicted, and they started saying, no, that's not the case. That's not the case. They were pushing it. They were pushing doctors to write prescriptions. Pharmacies were writing prescriptions left and right. And it was happening a lot in rural America. Rural America was devastated by it. And then as people couldn't get the prescriptions or couldn't afford it, they started turning to cheaper stuff, heroin, fentanyl, and it just cascaded from there. And the Sackler family is still, as I said, the government's still trying to finalize a settlement with the Sackler family that they will have to have $11 billion fortune that they would have to pay a fine. I think it was $4 or $5 billion over 10 years, which is basically the interest on their fortune. So
So it paid them to go that direction, regardless.
yeah, yeah, there is no, instead of, like, if you start putting some in jail, um, China, I don't know if I'm advocating this, but China did something when they had I don't know if it was the 90s or 2000s, they had a tainted milk scandal, and people died from drinking tainted milk that these corporations put out. The
Mhm.
government went after the executives, jailed them, and this is the part where I don't know if this is great, but some people were executed, some of the
Oh
corporate
my.
executives.
Well, we're
So,
going to have to pick up on that cheery
yeah.
note on the other side of a station break. Please stay with us. Michael and I will continue our
Thank you.
discussion on the other side of this break. Are you telling me we have to change? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. We're continuing our discussion with Michael Wayne, his website, drmichaelwayne.com. It seems like maybe there is no option outside of pretty radical change. Is this the case? And if so, where do we begin?
Well, I wouldn't, yeah, radical change, maybe that's semantics, maybe not. But that's why you mentioned my book, Toward a More Perfect Union. And in describing, you said it was political, economic, psychological, and spiritual, because there's also a change in mindset that encompasses this. So maybe it is radical because, for some people, changing the mind, right, what we talked about in the very beginning, when we talked about Chinese medicine and qi and impediments to health, attitude, thinking. A lot of it is just toxic thinking in this country. And that's where I said earlier that some of the changes can be legislated, but then many of them have to be philosophical changes, and it's the philosophical changes towards the public good. So is it radical to change, open our hearts?
In
Yeah,
this society, I'd have to say it
yeah,
is. That's pretty
yeah.
radical. Um, as we hopefully start to open our hearts, start to see other as part of us, this unification that we're supposedly coming into during this particular time as we move into the Aquarian era, do you think we'll be more supported to actually reevaluate our mindset?
I hope so, because we have a kind of a fork in the road that we either have to kind of evolve or maybe not make it. Um, and so we really have to open our hearts, open our minds. But I want to say one thing towards that, because American democracy was based on the oldest democracy in the United States, sorry, in the world, and that was the Iroquois Confederacy, Haudenosaunee people. And their constitution is the oldest constitution in the world, and their constitution was predicated on human flourishing. Perhaps they didn't use that term, but it was predicated on looking how your actions impact the seven generations going forward, and that we had to be kind and care and compassion for all sentient beings, humans, animals, the planet, nature. So in a way, we have to just remember the roots of American democracy and really put that forward.
I'm really glad you brought up we need to include the animals, the plants, the planet
Mhm.
itself. Do you see the situation we're in as far as the global warming and everything else directly related to our narcissism and greed?
Yeah, there's definitely our separation, our dualistic mentality, our separation from ourselves, from others, from animals, from the planet, our disconnection to everything really is perhaps maybe that's the biggest illness. There's an indigenous term, Wetiko, which is, you know, I think it's the biggest virus of them all. It's greater than COVID. It's the virus of our separation and our inability to treat the earth as a sacred instrument that not that serves us, but we serve it. Are we are in synergy with each other, with the earth and ourselves?
Or we're going to get a final eviction notice, it looks like to me.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, Gwilda.
Well, Michael, it's that time in the show when I get to ask you, what's your mission?
What's my mission is, oh, that's a good question. Is I would say it's human flourishing, that we create a society where all could flourish, and that all can and aspire to be to their greatest potential.
We have this belief that he who has the most money wins. Okay. That
Hmm.
if I win the lottery, then I'll be happy. Okay. If I have all these things, then I'll be happy. But that's not necessarily the case, is it?
No, I mean the old saying, "Money doesn't buy happiness," truly is the reality, and even studies have shown. I think it's said that up until about 75,000, money can relate to happiness up until about $75,000 a year, or so. And not everyone needs to make that much money. But after that, there's no correlation between money and happiness. And I think, one of the problems talking about billionaires, taxation systems, and disconnection is that, you know, it seems like the more people accrue, especially like when they have the ability to accrue, it's almost as if they're less happy because that's what replaces that deep emptiness of their soul.
So, what does reconfiguring the economic system, what role does that play in a democracy that works?
Yeah, so that's a really good question and goes really is an important question. Um, Franklin Theodore Roosevelt, the former president of the United States, once said that there can be no political democracy without economic democracy. So economic democracy is, just as we've talking, create a society that works for all, that we don't have this extreme level of wealth inequality, um, where and that the working class and middle class are working but spinning their wheels and not feeling they're getting ahead, as everything prices just keep spiraling out of control, while the wealth class is in a different stratosphere and can live live like a gilded age. So instead, there would be a fair taxation system. There would be things like universal health care, low cost college, and just all the ways where people can again aspire and flourish without having to worry, how am I going to get ahead? Because getting ahead, social mobility is really, and ability for to be socially mobile is, one of the great hallmarks of a society that flourishes.
And yet, it's probably one of the largest stressors in our life, isn't it?
Right, right. And United States on studies has a is of all the democracies has a lower level of social mobility, the social mobility index, because of this ability. Like, let's say someone has a job they don't like and they'd like to leave, but they have to think, oh, but my healthcare um, policy is really good through my employer, and I may not get that elsewhere. And so they think, oh, I got to stay at my job.
And they become stuck and they become victims, and round we go.
Yeah.
So, Gandhi said, democracy requires a change of heart. What did he mean by that?
Well, yeah, that's a good question, Gwilda, and it touches on what I was saying before, that we can legislate certain things, but other things are also the personal, the spiritual, the psychological. How do we open our heart? And when I talked about the Iroquois, the Haudenosaunee, and their constitution was about how do we treat the animals, the earth, and how do we think about and how do we think about 7 generations down the line? So to do that, you have to there has to be a certain amount of love in it, that you're and the concern. Marianne Williamson wrote a book called The Politics of Love, and it's really about, in a way, that when she ran for president, that was her platform, the politics of love. Um, so it's not like, oh, we got to walk up to everyone and hug them, but we have to be caring about people and not just say, oh, tough luck, I did it on my own, you can do it on your own, because nobody does it on their own. It's always takes everybody.
Well,
Uh,
there's a silver spoon and all that too.
yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
what problems have come up when attempting to apply the social democracy principles?
Well, one, can it be sustainable? Because the social democracies have their issues now too. Um, And so, and does it work? Like people have said, well, it works in those countries because they're more homogenous, and the United States is so big and so diverse. But I would say, yeah, we have 300 million people, but that's more money that potentially we could have. But And some think, there's less. So one of the great things about the United States is, from social mobility, from those who are able to get ahead, they can really they have the potential to become rich, to become famous, and if that's what they want, which is not that saying that's like the great aspiration, but where people in social democracy just feel like, oh, just stay where you are, don't make waves. The United States is like the young teenager kicking and screaming, and sometimes they have good ideas. A lot of innovations have come out of the United States. Um,
But sometimes it's a matter of entitlement, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, and again, you have to think about a lot of technological innovation has come out of the United States, but in terms of entitlement, you have to think about how does that technology impact, everything? There's great understanding like social media and its influence on young people and detrimental influence. So, we have to not just like put it out there um, and then figure out what went wrong, but instead think about all these things and move a little slower in making it.
Well, unfortunately, Michael, we are out of time, but
Oh, yeah.
thank you so much for coming on the
Oh,
show.
thank you, Gwilda. It's been a pleasure and an
Real
honor.
pleasure. Our guest this hour has been Michael Wayne. Michael is the author of 5 books, his latest, Towards a More Perfect Union, From Scarcity to Abundance for All, and is currently in post production of a documentary film, How to Save Democracy. To find out more about Michael, where you can find his books and all he has to offer, visit his website, drmichaelwayne.com. This has been Mission Evolution with Gwilda Wiyaka. For more information or to enjoy past archived episodes, visit our website at www.missionevolution.org. But most importantly, please be sure to join me right here next time. This mission will continue, bringing information, resources, and support to our rapidly evolving world.